You know, we usually think of tattoo removal as a pretty simple choice, right? Kind of like whitening your teeth or maybe getting a new haircut. But what if it's something way, way deeper? Turns out the science and even the philosophy behind removing a tattoo, well, it opens up this fascinating clash between who we think we are and the bodies we actually live in. So let's get one thing straight. This isn't just some simple cosmetic procedure. It's a deliberate, controlled injury. It's an act that basically shines a spotlight on this fundamental mismatch, a mismatch between our identity, which is always changing, and our skin, which is built to be permanent. This whole explainer is really about the friction between those two very different clocks.
Okay, so to really get a grip on removal, we've actually got to start with why tattoos are permanent in the first place. And it's not some kind of magic ink. Nope, it's a fascinating biological truce that's happening right under your skin right now. The key concept here is something called a biological détente. Basically, your body immediately sees that tattoo ink as a foreign invader. The problem is, it can't get rid of it. So what's the next best strategy? Containment. A tattoo's permanence isn't passive. It's an active, ongoing stalemate between your immune system and the ink. And here's the heart of the problem for your immune system. From your body's point of view, these ink particles are like giant boulders. And the cleanup crew, your immune cells, they're just too small to haul them away. So if you can't kick the intruder out, what do? You build a prison around it. So the process is always the same. Your body spots the ink, tries and fails to remove it, and then decides to trap it in what our source material calls a prison of flesh. It's an incredibly stable system. As old cells die off, new ones are literally recruited to come in and keep that ink locked down year after year after year.
Okay, so we've got this biological system that's designed for durability, for permanence. But what happens when the person living inside that system changes?
Yeah, check out this number. It is pretty staggering. 1 in 4 people with a tattoo eventually come to regret it. Now, that's not some rare thing. That is a common, almost predictable outcome of putting a permanent mark on a body that's housing a very non-permanent self.
So does this just mean that a quarter of everyone with a tattoo just made a bad decision? Was it simply a failure of judgment?
Nope, not at all. The source material suggests that tattoo regret isn't proof that you were foolish. It's actually evidence that your identity is a moving target. I mean, think about it. The person you are at 30 is not the same person you are at 20. The real issue is that you chose a medium, your own living skin, that was built to last forever.
All right, so what happens when you decide you want to break that stalemate? How do you actually undo this permanent mark? Well, this is where the physics of it all gets kind of brutal.
A modern laser isn't just burning the ink away, it's way more intense. It fires this incredibly short, powerful pulse of energy. In a single nanosecond, that's a billionth of a second, the ink superheats to around 600 degrees Celsius. That's as hot as red-hot iron. This insane heat makes the ink particle violently shatter, and the water around it vaporizes, creating these little shockwaves that damage the tissue nearby.
And the experience of getting it done, well, it absolutely matches the violence of the physics. People describe this sharp pain, kind of like being electrocuted. They talk about the smell of burnt hair and an actual audible cracking sound as the ink fragments. The aftermath is basically an internal burn wound that your body now has to deal with. Which brings us to this quote, which just nails it. You're not erasing anything. What you're really doing is pulverizing a structure that was carefully contained inside your own body, and then basically telling your immune system, hey, you clean up this mess. So this is where the story gets really, really fascinating. All of that pulverized debris, all those shattered ink particles, where do they actually go? You know, there's this kind of dark, poetic symmetry to it all. The very same immune system that spent years, maybe decades, acting as the prison guard for your tattoo is now recruited to be the janitor. Its entire job just flips on a dime. So let's trace the ink's little journey, shall we? Before the laser, you've got these big ink particles locked in place right there in your skin. But after the laser, you have these tiny, shattered fragments that your immune cells can finally grab and carry away. But they don't just vanish. They get transported to your lymph nodes. And that right there is the crucial takeaway. The ink isn't gone. It has just changed its address. It moves from your skin to your lymphatic system, where all those little fragments will probably collect and stay for the rest of your life. It's not a fresh start. It's just a new storage unit inside your body. Which leaves us with this final kind of provocative thought, doesn't it? If our bodies are built to contain and remember, to never truly erase the past, but just relocate it, what does that tell us about who we are? Maybe it suggests that change isn't about deletion at all. Maybe it's about integration, about carrying the fragments of our past selves with us, forever, even when they're no longer visible on the surface. What if it's really about this fundamental conflict between our desire to change who we are and a body that's, well, hardwired to resist that very change? We're going to dive into this idea, this myth of the editable self. I mean, it's a totally fair question, especially today. We live in a world where you can delete almost anything with a single click, so why can't you just erase a tattoo? Why is it this long, painful, super complicated process? Well, the simple answer, and it's kind of mind-bending, is that our bodies just aren't designed to agree with our decisions.
And here's the real kicker, the paradox of it all. The very same systems in your body that you'd think would be fighting to get rid of this foreign ink are actually the ones working to preserve it. I mean, think about that. Your body isn't sitting there judging your taste in tattoos. No. Its only job, its prime directive, is to maintain stability, to prevent chaos. And that ink? It's now part of the stable system.
Okay, so to really get why this is so tough, we have to zoom in. We've got to look at what's happening on a biological level, because this isn't just a simple erasure. Oh, no. It is a full-on battle against your own body's defense mechanisms.
Yeah, so it's really less like hitting delete and way more like a long, drawn-out negotiation. You make your move with the laser, right? And then your biology immediately pushes back. It's this back and forth, this conversation that happens over months, sometimes even years, one painful installment at a time.
And this cycle is absolutely key to understanding the whole thing. So step 1, the laser comes in and bam, shatters the ink particles into tiny pieces. Step 2, your immune system rushes in and cleans some of them up. But, and this is the crucial part, step 3, your own cells then reabsorb the ink that's left over. They basically cement the tattoo right back into your skin. It's wild, right? Your body is actively working to undo the very thing you're trying to do.
And that cycle, that constant restabilization, is exactly why it takes so freaking long. On average, we're talking about 5 to 12 sessions. Think about that. 5 to 12 separate times you have to go through that whole process of rupture and repair, just to get anywhere near a clean slate. So what's happening here is that this very physical, biological process is running parallel to something much more personal, right? You've got the scientific truth of what's happening in the skin, and then you've got the lived truth, the human story behind the tattoo. And well, these two truths, they don't always see eye to eye. So on one side, you've got the science. It's pretty straightforward, almost mechanical. Energy goes in, tissue gets damaged, immune system cleans up. Linear. But on the other side, you've got the human experience, the lived truth. And that is anything but linear. It's messy, it's a journey of identity, maybe some regret or shame, and this deep desire to revise your own story. The real conflict, the friction, happens when we expect that clean, linear science to instantly obey our messy, non-linear feelings. And this right here is the core tension of it all. Your mind can decide, you know what, I'm not that person anymore. But your tissues, your actual physical body cannot instantly comply. This is the exact point where our personal story just smacks right into the wall of objective biology. You can change your mind in a split second, but your body, it's operating on a completely different clock, a much, much slower one. And this tug of war between our minds and our bodies, it's not just a personal struggle. It actually points to this really powerful, very modern myth, the myth of what we could call the software self. We've kind of been taught to think of our own identities as if they're software, something you can just update or patch or completely rebrand whenever you feel like it. Don't like version 1.0 of yourself? No problem, just install version 2.0. And look, that idea feels incredibly freeing, right? But is it actually true? Well, the short answer is no. Not really. Our minds might feel like they're software, all flexible and adaptable, but the physical body they're running on, that's a whole different story. Because the body isn't software, it's hardware, and it's built with all these biological safety constraints. Things designed for stability, for continuity, not for your latest rebrand. By its very nature, it's a deeply conservative machine.
So, what happens when we try to treat our biological hardware like it's just easily editable software? Well, eventually, biology sends you an invoice. And believe me, there's a very real cost to forcing that kind of change.
I love how the source material puts it. If you treat the self as infinitely editable, eventually the body sends you an invoice. And that invoice, it's not paid with money. It's paid in pain, in time, and in literal physical damage to your tissue.
So this really brings us to the core lesson here. Look, identities change. That's totally normal. It's part of being human. But bodies are built to stabilize. That is their primary function. And when you try to just overwrite that fundamental biological programming, it comes at a cost. And even after you pay that price, the past doesn't just vanish. It just relocates. Maybe it becomes a scar, or maybe it just becomes the memory of the struggle itself.
Ultimately, it comes down to this. The self is a moving narrative, but it rides inside a conservative machine built for continuity. Our sense of who we are is always in motion. It's the story that's constantly evolving. But that story is being carried by hardware that is designed literally for our own survival, to keep things stable and consistent. And really, that's the heart of it all, isn't it? You can outgrow an identity in a year. Heck, you can outgrow it in a single moment of clarity. But your body, that physical hardware, it might take years, even a decade, to finally agree to the new terms and conditions.
Which kind of leaves us with this one big final question to think about. What is this gap between how fast our consciousness can update itself and how incredibly slowly our flesh renegotiates reality? Because that gap, the space between the person we've already decided to be and the body that's still playing catch-up, that's where so much of life actually happens.